Thank you for joining us this evening for the October 15th meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Commissioner Hudson is absent. Commissioner Metcalf is absent. Commissioner Mitchoff is absent. Commissioner Glover is absent. Commissioner Butt.
Here.
Commissioner Abelson.
Here.
Commissioner Pierce is absent. Alternate Haskew attending for Commissioner David Durant.
Here.
Commissioner Arnerich.
Here.
Commissioner Taylor. And Chair Kevin Romick.
Here.
So for the record, we do have a quorum. We also have ex officio representatives present. Representative Myrna De Vera. Representative Gail Murray. Thank you. And Representative Worth is not present. Thanks.
Before we go any further, we have a new employee, and Randy will introduce her.
Thank you very much, Chair Romick. Commissioners, I'd like to introduce to you our newest hire. She doesn't come from Caltrans, by the way, because I was told that. Ross and I hired her, made the decision. She was one of 84 candidates that applied for the job of Associate Transportation Engineer, and she surfaced to the top. She has 12 years working for a consulting firm, Moffitt Nichols. She got an undergraduate degree and a graduate degree from UC Berkeley, so and not Cal Poly, but it's close, it's Berkeley. She's a design expert, and her name is Stephanie Hu. Are you there? Would you like to say something? Speech? No speech? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Moving on to public comments, item number D. I don't have any speaker cards at this time. Yes.
For the record, I'd just like to note that Commissioner Hudson has arrived.
Thank you.
And Warren, she's in another room.
And who?
Amy.
Okay. We'll go on to item number 1. Approval of minutes.
So moved.
First, it says first by Abelson, second by Hudson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Abstain. Okay, we have one abstention. Haskew, Commissioner Haskew. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 approvals. Moving on to the consent calendar. Is there anything before we go to the consent calendar, you all have a letter in your package for item 2A6. It's a supportive letter, so if you have an opportunity here. Give it a quick read. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So with that notice, do we have a motion for the rest of the calendar, or the range, or for the calendar?
Actually, I'd like to pull item 2C1, just for question.
Okay. Do I have a motion on the remainder of the calendar? A motion on the remainder of the calendar by
So moved, but then you need a second.
by
Second.
first by Taylor, second by Abelson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Unanimous vote. Commissioner Arnerich, 2C1.
Just a question. Since there's a subcommittee that's working on this, I just want to know, did the subcommittee look at this and make that recommendation, or Randy Carlton was that? I just thought I'd ask, since I'm not on that subcommittee. I don't have an issue with it, just really a question for process.
Good evening,
Chair Romick and members of the commission. To answer your question, Commissioner Arnrich, yes, the ad hoc committee did meet and discuss authority medical benefits. They discussed the rates for the upcoming calendar year and made the recommendation to continue with the existing benefit plan.
Great. I'd move the item then. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Go ahead and second it. Yes, no, we are supportive of this, and thank you for pulling this. I'm sorry I'm late. I just wanted to mention that the committee did consider a different cost ratio or share ratio, but because the rates come out from PERS and we had to get our information into them by a deadline, the committee agreed that once rates are available next year, we will be taking this matter up again and looking at a different cost share ratio at that time.
If I can. Usually we move things along in the subcommittee. This one, no, we went back and forth for a while on this one, and everybody got their opinion out. But when you're under time constraints, you do the best with what you got. I think we did a pretty good, after going through all the alternatives, that we came up with the best decision.
I had a first by Armour, second by Hudson. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries unanimously. On to item 4.0.
Chair Romick.
Thank you, Chair Romick. In case it wasn't clear, I just wanted to note for the record that Commissioner Mitchoff has arrived. Thank you.
On to item 3.0, major discussion items. There are none. Item 4.0, regular agenda items. 4A, administrative 4.A, administrative and project committee none. 4B, planning committee. Next item is 4B3, which is an update on the draft 2014 countywide transportation plan. After the staff presentations for this item, we will take public comment. Any member of the public who would like to comment on either the draft 2014 CTP or the draft supplemental environmental impact report to the 2014 CTP, please submit a speaker card located on the back table to Denise up here in front, and we will hear your comments following the presentations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Martin Engelman, Deputy Executive Director for Planning at Contra Costa Transportation Authority. And we have 3 people involved with this presentation, so I'll use the standing mic while they are seated here. This item is actually in 4 parts. The first is a schedule update from me. The second is a status of the public outreach, which you'll hear from Lindsay Willis, our Director for External Affairs. And then a review of the supplemental environmental impact report, which was released last September, and you'll hear from Chris Ford, our consultant on that project. First, the schedule. As you know, the draft 2014 CTP was first released in early August 2014, and at that time the comment period was to extend through August and all the way through September to September 30th. And adoption of the final CTP was scheduled for December 17, 2014. That schedule was predicated upon release of a draft environmental impact report in the middle of August, and we were going to run the comment period for both of those simultaneously out to the end of September. Due to issues encountered with the travel demand forecasting model, release of the draft EIR was delayed until September 19th, and so close of comment for that now with a 45-day review period is November 3rd. So in consultation with the CTP Ad Hoc Committee, staff extended the comment period for the draft CTP from September 30th out to November 3rd, thereby allowing additional time for public input and aligning the review period of the draft countywide plan with the review period of the draft supplemental environmental impact report. The new schedule has some implications on the adoption date for the authority. It pushes the adoption date out 2 months from December 17th out to February 18th, at which time the authority will certify the final supplemental environmental impact report and adopt the final 2014 CTP update. We will continue to call it the 2014 update, although you'll be adopting it in 2015. And so that's the schedule in a nutshell. I'll pause here and ask if there are any questions regarding the schedule, and then we'll move on to the status of the public outreach effort. Okay, hearing none, so Lindsay Willis, our Director of External Affairs, will present the status of the public outreach effort.
Good evening, Commissioners. I will keep this short and sweet since the folks who attended the Planning Committee meeting already saw a brief update, so I don't want to bore them again. As Martin mentioned, we're a little more than halfway through our public comment period, and so this is really designed to just kind of give you a progress report on what we've seen and heard so far, knowing that there may still be more comments coming along. As you may recall, in February and March, we did a telephone survey, and we asked folks what they considered their top transportation priorities, and these are a few of the items that kind of rose to the top during that survey of February and March in 2014. I see a few of you squinting, so I'll just give you the top three real quick. It's traffic smoothing on major roads, pothole repair, BART highways, better use of technology, buses, sidewalks, bike lanes, and paths. As part of our public outreach effort, just to refresh your memory, we had an online public engagement tool where people could submit their requests online and share their bright ideas with friends. We did 5 in-person workshops. We did a telephone town hall. We did paper surveys available to folks who wanted to do that. So we tried to really kind of cover the board in terms of how we reached out to folks. For the public workshops, we had about 130 attendees at all 5 workshops. The tone was really positive. As you can see, we actually had some pretty decent attendance at a few of the workshops, which we were really, proud about. And the comments were all over the board, really, depending on which area of the county we were in. But we heard a lot of great ideas, and the people who took the time to attend had some really thoughtful comments for us on how we could improve our system. The telephone town hall was something new. We had never tried it before, and we did that after all the in-person meetings. And at one point, you can see we had more than 4,300 people on the call, which was really great. Our staff was fielding questions, and I have to tell you, it felt a little bit like doing a telethon or something, because folks had a lot of questions and they all wanted to get through to have Randy and Martin answer their questions. So it was a little hectic for us behind the scenes, but a lot of fun, and I think something we may try again. And kind of note here, we were able to do 2 polls live for people on the call. And of the people who took the polls, quite a few, almost 90% thought that BART should be a priority, and almost 80% thought that technology should be included in some way, shape, or form as we move forward. We also had our online engagement tool, keepcontracostamoving.net, and this just shows you, we've had quite a few visitors. We've had almost 330 ideas submitted, and similar to what we saw earlier, the transportation priorities that people are voting for and selecting, BART, bicycles, buses, pedestrians. I think ferries overtook highways in the last week as I gave this presentation, so things are ever shifting online, but it's been really fun to see what people are voting for. And if you haven't checked out the site, you don't need to log in to kind of view all the comments that people are making and the ideas they've submitted. As I mentioned earlier, we also have alternate ways for people who don't want to go online to submit their ideas. So far we've gotten 152 paper surveys. We've gotten more than 60 comments via email. And as all of our admin staff will tell you, I put more than 30 phone calls because we're still tabulating. People are sharing their opinions right and left, and it's really great. We're getting a lot of feedback. And so this is my brief pitch to you. It's not too late. We're still listening, especially Randy and Peter in the back row. Martin and I are the greeters by the door. As Martin mentioned, the comment period ends November 3rd, and we still have paper surveys that we can give you. People can still submit comments via email. They can call us. However you'd like to engage your constituents, we're here to help. Just let us know. And that concludes my brief update. So I'll take any questions, or I'll hand you over to Chris.
All right. Sarah. Yeah. My name is Chris Ford. I work for the environmental planning firm of Lampere Gregory, and we undertook the Supplemental Environmental Impact Report for the 2014 CTP. I'll just call it the EIR from here on out. And this is just a brief summary on the approach and the findings of the EIR. This was undertaken per Authority Council's advice that the nature of the RTPC action plan suggests that maybe a fuller degree of environmental review is required. And so like all past CTP updates, this one has an environmental impact review of it. The approach is a supplement to the 2009 EIR for that CTP, and I'll explain that further in a few more slides. Like past CTP EIRs, this is a programmatic one. It looks at the CTP as a single project. The focus is on regional impacts as a result. And all the projects that make up the CTP, they're going to get their own separate project level environmental review to whatever degree required when it comes to the point that they're going to be considered for adoption. A lot of the details aren't known yet on those, so it wouldn't be possible to give detailed, localized project level review now. There's a few small changes in the approach of this EIR versus the one from the 2009 CTP. There's some adjustments to the thresholds of significance, basically evolutions in legislation, best practices, case law. There are new model runs in order to get the current existing conditions in terms of traffic. Those model runs did take into account projections 2013 from ABAG, and those are the same that are being used by ABAG and MTC for Plan Bay area, so this at least aligns with those projections. The baseline year for impact evaluation was moved up 5 years to 2040. And also, unlike the last EIR, there's some analysis and mitigation related to construction period impacts that really shows up in air quality, as well as impacts on emergency plans and evacuation. And so there's some additional language to make sure that's covered. 2 quick slides on what a supplemental EIR is. This is something that's possible under CEQA in conditions in which there have been relatively few changes to physical and regulatory settings, and not much has changed in Contra Costa since 2009 in terms of laws, regulations, as well as issues like the biology, the geology, the hydrology, et cetera, of the county. And so there have been relatively few changes also in terms of the actual CTP. The types of projects that are in the new CTP are pretty similar to those that were in the last one. And so what the supplemental EIR is it provides the supplemental information to the 2009 EIR that's needed to explain when there's actually been a change in the environmental setting, such as if there had been a new biological resource discovered, any other new environmental issues discovered, also if there were projects with different or greater impacts than those in the 2009 version, as well as if there were projects in new locations which could impact the environment. So that's an example such as work on Marsh Creek Road, that's an area that wasn't covered in the 2009 CTP. Otherwise, the whole process is the same as a regular EIR in terms of the public review process, the commenting, and the responses. Overall, what the EIR found was that the 2014 CTP would improve future conditions compared to a no project scenario. No project would simply be the continuation of the 2009 CTP. All the projects have similar impacts to the 2009 CTP because they're similar types of projects and generally of smaller scale, in fact. The mitigation measures used in 2009 are generally adequate. There were some updates to reflect best practices and, as I mentioned, some construction period impact mitigation. This is the only exciting, at least in terms of visually, slide in the whole presentation. It's not just words, it's numbers. So this compares what the existing conditions are to those under the no project condition and those with the CTP. As you can see, a number of these would improve even without the projects. VMT per capita, drive alone mode share, transit ridership would improve under the no project scenario, but they're even better with the CTP. Daily vehicle hours of delay are going to worsen due to general regional growth in terms of population and jobs. That will happen regardless of the project, but it will be less bad with the CTP. Significant unavoidable impacts, of course, is a big deal in CEQA. There were 4 found in the 2009 EIR, and the same apply to this version of the CTP. Alteration of scenic views, construction period noise, cumulative increases in noise levels, as well as conversion of agricultural land. Essentially, any conversion is a significant unavoidable impact. There is one additional significant unavoidable impact in this EIR for this CTP, short-term impacts in air quality near construction sites. Nothing has changed in terms of the CTP and the nature of its projects, what it does to air quality. Rather, this conclusion is consistent with the EIR for Plan Bay Area that conservatively found that, at least at this scale, it's not possible to determine for sure that that would be a less than significant impact after mitigation measures. So it's conservatively being careful in saying this would be a significant unavoidable impact. Like any EIR, this one includes an analysis of alternatives. In addition to the no project alternative, the three alternatives reviewed were those similar to those used in the 2009 CTP. They study three different conditions under which would be achieved through some changes in policy as well as shifts in emphasis of funding and maybe priority of projects. One would be to maximize freeway performance. Another would be to increase transit ridership, and a third would be to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. None of these alternatives would avoid the significant impacts that would be created under the CTP. The environmentally superior alternative is number 3, reduce greenhouse gas emissions scenario. However, the overall differences between the proposed project and all the alternatives is very minor. And simply, these are the next steps that Martin laid out. All public comments are due by close of business, November 3rd. The final supplemental EIR will be released in January. We'll have responses to public comments and any changes to the draft EIR and corrections. February will be the time for the final certification.
Thank you. That is a very concise report. And I'm not on the other committee, so I didn't get to see this before. One question I had is just under changes in approach versus 2009, where you used the new model using the county-wide model in our 2013 projections. What, that just states that's what you did. What was the result of that, and how did it come out? Did it significantly change numbers one way or the other? Is the model more lenient, or what was your opinion of how that came out?
It's a good question that Martin may be able to answer better. I'm not a modeler myself, and so
You look like a modeler.
Oh, man, really? Matt Kelly looks like a modeler.
Okay. Actually, I have no idea what a modeler looks like.
Well, I can respond to your question, Commissioner Arnridge.
Thank you.
The 2009 CTP actually used ancient history for projections. It was projections 2005, which was pre-recession. So we had a booming economy for 2010 and a lot of jobs in the Bay Area. So, and also it included some elements of our focus on the future, but it really didn't, or shaping our future. It didn't include all of the elements that came out from identifying the priority development areas and compact land use and living where you work. So P2013 dramatically reduced the jobs for the baseline to get it back to reality based upon the census tract. So when we grow out to 2040, we really don't recover all those jobs that we used to have. The housing forecast is about the same as it was. It's a pretty high forecast, actually, because the objective of the Association of Bay Area Governments is that if you work in the Bay Area, that you'll be able to find a house in the Bay Area. So we have a lot of housing. That housing is located primarily in the priority development areas, and it's also focused around the 3 major cities, San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose. We can show you specific tables city by city if you want to see the comparisons, but I would say it's a more focused growth and fewer jobs out in the suburbs, more jobs in the inner city areas, and more housing focused into the priority development areas.
And did we, along with that, obviously with the 2009, we were projecting the Caldecott opening. Now we have it. Was this based on real data and changes in pattern, or was it still using that previous model to say, well, we know this is the impact? And conversely, or at the same time, when you look at State Route 4 in East County, we've made some changes that we didn't know we were going to do that are improving that. Did that, and I guess what I'm after is this result in this model, is it better than what we thought, or is it worse?
When we started the 2014 CTP, the Caldecott Tunnel wasn't finished yet. Our 2010 base did not include the Caldecott Tunnel. As time went by, we kind of got overtaken by events. The Caldecott Tunnel opened, and we actually did more monitoring in 2012 and 2013. So we've had to shift the baseline a little bit. I think we're caught up now, and we have a 2013 baseline that reflects construction of the Caldecott Tunnel, its completion already, and the progress on Highway 4 East.
Great, thank you.
You do that, okay. I can, well, I have to make sure that we don't have any public comments. We did. I got the first and the second, you're right. The fourth part of this process is public comment. We've already taken questions from board members. We're going to take any public comment. Is there anyone? I'll even let you fill out a speak card afterwards if you want to come up and speak now. Apparently not, so we can close the public hearing part of this process. And we have Mitch off with a first and Arndt with a second. Any other comments, questions at this time? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries unanimously.
Good job.
Diane.
I should note for the record that Commissioner Pierce has joined the meeting, as well as Representative Worth.
On to item 4B4. Authorization to contribute $300,000 toward the proposed West County High Capacity Transit Study. Martin, you're up again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This item is a request to the board for in-concept approval to take an active role in the proposed West Contra Costa High Capacity Transit Investment Study and provide funding in the amount of $300,000 towards the study, which is estimated to cost a total of $1.2 million. As part of the 2014 CTP update, West County is updating its action plan for routes of regional significance, and that action plan includes a number of goals and objectives that call for participation in and development of a transit investment study to look at transit opportunities along the I-80 corridor in West County, which, as you know, is and still remains the most congested segment of roadway in the Bay region. To implement the study, WCTAC has committed $400,000 in funding through use of Measure J Subregional Transportation Needs Funds, Program 28. BART has also committed $300,000, and WCTAC has approached CCTA and MTC to come up with the balance, $300,000 each, for a total of $1.2 million for the study and a $100,000 contingency. The draft scope of work for the study was included as Attachment A in the Planning Committee packet. The Planning Committee had an extensive discussion about this request and asked staff a number of questions regarding the authority's role, similar studies that have been done, use of federal funds, geographic equity, protocol for responding to these types of one-time requests, and the incremental cost of federalizing the study. I hope we've done a good job of responding to those questions, and we've replied to each one in the board letter on pages 4B4-4, 5, and 6. We also have a new attachment B in the packet, and that lists similar studies, staff's role, how they were funded, and the impetus for those studies. So we have a long history of collaborating with our partners on these types of studies. I'll defer to the Planning Committee members if they wish to further discuss their questions and staff's response to those questions. And before we open the discussion, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to invite John Nemeth to give a brief PowerPoint on the background of the study. And John is the Executive Director for WCTAC.
Okay, thank you, Martin. When we were here a couple of weeks back, there was interest from the Planning Committee on getting a little bit more background and context on what we're proposing to do here. So I'm going to briefly do that for you tonight. When we look at our neck of the woods, we've got I-80, which I've heard the word insidious used to describe the congestion on that stretch of freeway. And as you heard with the CTP update, there's expected to be more pressure on that freeway as time goes on. I think given that and given our proximity to San Francisco and Oakland, we're a pretty good market for transit. And we heard a lot of interest in transit options and expanding transit options at the CTP workshops, both in Richmond and in Hercules. And in light of that, and due to that, we have a goal in our action plan, and it's a long-standing goal, to work on expanding high-capacity transit in West County, and a number of actions that are consistent with that, whether it's implementing ferry service or working on studies with Capital Corridor to see what could be done in the future, improving bus transportation, just a number of things that fit under that general goal. In February, our board tasked us with putting together a scope of work for this study and doing that in cooperation with our transit operator partners in West County, so BART and AC Transit and WestCat. They've committed $400,000, as Martin mentioned, in Measure J 28 sub-regional needs funds towards that effort. And we're also kind of at a unique moment where at the same time that our board is willing and interested to put in some of their own money to do this study, we also have a commitment from BART at the same time to do that as well. And they've got $300,000 that they've pledged to this study. This study will certainly look at the possibility of a BART extension, what BART refers to as classic BART technology, but that's not all that it is. The study has evolved a little bit, I think, over these last few months. It's definitely going to be a multimodal study that's, in addition to looking at classic BART, we're going to look at the opportunities for expanding things like express bus service to San Francisco. Those do pretty well in our area. There's the opportunity to look at what in East County is called E-BART and what in our area is known as W-BART, which is some type of service using standard gauge rail in one of those railroad rights-of-way, the BNSF, the UP corridor, the ones out where we are. And that gets a little bit complicated in that, unlike BART or unlike express buses, which are kind of have a discrete geography, when we're looking at things like the W-BART concept that might be sharing tracks with Capital Corridor, you get into Capital Corridor's needs and their long-term vision, which gets into kind of a much larger geographic look. But we are talking with them, and they'll definitely be part of this effort. And with ferries, our board asked us to include that in this study as well, and you've already done a lot of that work for us with your evaluation of ferry feasibility in Contra Costa earlier this year. So a lot of work's already been done, and that's helpful to us, so we're going to be mindful of that. There have been studies done looking at BART in the past. AC Transit is about to do a major corridor study looking at the potential for something like BRT on San Pablo Avenue. And as I mentioned, you just recently did a ferry study. Capital Corridors is doing a major update to their vision this year. So we're kind of keeping all these things in mind and making sure that we're not reinventing any wheels here or duplicating any work, that we can take advantage of data that's already been collected in these efforts, and that we're not in conflict with these things. But we are excited about the prospect of this study being kind of something that can span across multiple agencies and kind of take a look at a variety of things all at the same time. So our study area is really all of West County. And again, the focus is transit, and it's really primarily looking at the big move within West County, which is kind of that north-south, especially southbound in the AM, as opposed to things like crosstown service or local service. This is really primarily looking at kind of commute-oriented options. So just an overview of some of the study kind of scope tasks and the cost for those tasks. We're going to kind of gear up with some goals and objectives. We will have public participation kind of layered throughout this effort. We're going to be gathering a bunch of information on existing conditions and looking at travel markets, really trying to understand where are people going, where do people want to go, looking at some conceptual alternatives, evaluating those, and then with the most promising alternatives, doing some pretty thorough ridership modeling and cost estimating on those. So just getting into how we're seeing this study being organized and managed, the WCTAC board is proposed to be the policy committee, or basically the steering committee for this study. WCTAC itself would be the official lead agency, so we'll be paying the consultant bills and we'll be releasing the RFP for the study and doing some project management. to help us with the project management because they have a lot of capacity. BART has offered a lot of in-kind staff assistance, and we're talking with them about working out the details of that, and probably we'll have an agreement with them that spells that out. Our West County operators, and I've put CCTA with a question mark there. It's our West County operators that are going to be kind of a high level, what you might think of as a high level TAC. We've called them the project management group. I have them referred to as the study oversight group, but basically this is the group that kind of came up with the scope. This is the group that's going to be pretty heavily involved because they're going to have to be providing a lot of information to the consultant. And it's this group that's going to meet more frequently than our WIC-TAC TAC and kind of thinking about scoping issues and some of the details of the study. So we invite CCTA staff to participate at this particular level if that's of interest to this board and this organization. Then we will have our WIC-TAC TAC, where we have cities present as well, in addition to our transit operators, serve as our technical advisory committee, probably with some other agencies participating in that too, Capital Corridor and any other entities that need to be invited to participate in that. And as I mentioned, we will be having public outreach influencing this as well. So study funding, I think Martin kind of covered it, but WIC-TAC has contributed $400,000, BART $300,000, and we're looking for an additional $300,000 pledge from both CCTA and MTC, which would give us $1.2 million. We had estimated the cost of this being about $1.185, I think, on the previous slide. And then based on your staff suggestion, which I think was a good one, having a little bit of contingency in there just to give us a little bit of cushion for something that's this big. So if we get all these funds lined up, we will have that contingency. Tentative schedule here, we're hoping to release the RFP relatively soon, possibly by the end of this month. Maybe having a consultant on board under contract by January. And then we would hope to probably have a lot of information, probably by mid-2015. We would have a lot of information. But to complete this, we're probably looking at about a 16 to 18-month effort. We're going to do a little bit more refining of this once we get the consultant on board. So some next steps to get to the point of kicking this off and bringing somebody on board. Again, we're going to continue to pursue funds from MTC. Your staff has very kindly put me in touch with a consultant who is helping us ensure that our RFP is meeting federal procurement guidelines. Since the money that you're talking about putting in is federal dollars, we need to make sure that we do that. And so that's been extremely helpful. So we're working on kind of tweaking that RFP. Our board would need to approve the release of this RFP. And we're still kind of refining the organization of this, and particularly how we work with BART staff and what our role is versus their role. Once we get all that worked out, we'll be going through the RFP process and bringing a consultant on board to do the work. So that's the basic outline of the study here, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Actually, I have a question for our staff. And thank you both to Martin and others for providing us this additional information, because we had some concerns about this. I support the study. That isn't the issue. I'm on page 4 of 5, I guess, question 4, how much federal funding is available. So the request is for $300,000. Right now we get about $750. $600 seems to already be dedicated, so there's $150 left over, and staff estimates that approximately $150 could be set aside over a period of 2 years. What is that $150 currently being saved in a reserve fund, or are we using it for something else right now? Where I'm going is, are we going to take money away from another project in order to fund this, or is over these last few years when we've estimated approximately the $600,000, what have we done with that other $150?
I can respond to that, Commissioner Mitchoff. Again, Martin Engelman. We haven't had the luxury of having more than $600,000 until recently, and actually the amount of federal funding we've been getting has been increasing steadily. You'll notice the funding sources for the previous studies didn't involve federal funding until the last one, the State Route 4 Integrated Corridor Analysis. And as we've been sitting at the regional table and as we've been meeting with MTC, and MTC's been giving us more and more responsibility for developing a PDA strategy, for implementing the sustainable community strategy. They've given us more resources. And we've always been fortunate in that we were a half-cent sales tax agency, and we had planning funds to begin with. So we have a mix of planning funds and federal funds available. And it's only recently that we've had a little bit of extra money available to spend on this. There's no immediate call on those funds. There is obviously an opportunity cost of some sort in that you could spend it on another study. We don't have another one set up at this time, so in effect it would go into a kind of a reserve fund and would be available in the future if we were to set it aside. The unfortunate thing about federal funds is it's a use it or lose it thing. And so it's in our best interest to use it if we can use it efficiently. And so it's there and it's available now.
Great, and thank you. That's wonderful to hear that's how that's going. So one of my comments is as we move forward and if we continue to get federal funding, should this motion pass, would this go through APC or planning on how we want to maybe, I don't know that wish list is the right concept, but have studies lined up or concepts lined up? That's just a thought. And because I'm not getting this concept, what does in concept mean? I mean, we're either going to vote to give them the money or we're not. So can you explain that a little further to me, what in concept means?
So in concept would be a commitment that in the future you are going to be ready to give them the money, but it'll require some paperwork. It'll require development of a cooperative agreement. It could be a 4-party cooperative agreement among all the parties up there. MTC, BART, and WCTAC, and CCTA. So you're just making a commitment at this time, and you approve in concept the idea. And when it comes to you, then there won't be a big battle
I gotcha.
to
Okay.
sign the paperwork.
So, and seeing the different funding sources there, John, it looks like you had a TBD by MTC. So does that mean... where I'm going with this, and I appreciated the in concept, if everybody isn't able to pony up, then the money's returned, or we don't give the money until everybody has ponied up. I
can't speak for the board, but I would imagine if the authority wasn't interested in putting in the $300,000, that would leave us with only $700,000, which would make it tough to do.
No, I'm not suggesting that, and I'm just wondering, you have commitments from WCTAC and BART, and then if you get this commitment, there's MTC left. So if they didn't pony up, not that they wouldn't, but if they didn't, it wouldn't work out.
If we get the contribution from you, we'll be up to $1 million, and at that point, if we've got a study that's estimated at 1.185, I don't want to tell MTC this, but we might have an opportunity to think about how we could.
It's okay. We're all friends
I
here.
think we would search for a way to be able to do this if we.
Well, and I'm not suggesting that MTC won't come up with the funds. I just was wondering if anyone wasn't able to sign that document at the end. It would be unfortunate, but then money would stay in this reserve fund that Martin was talking about.
You do have the option, Commissioner Mitchoff and Mr. Chairman, you can make your in-concept approval contingent upon everybody stepping up to the plate and pitching in. That's your option.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great report. And I, like Karen, am fully in favor of the study. I think that's really wonderful. I would not want to condition it on everyone being there. I would hope that we would approve this tonight, and that then MTC would do the right thing and come to the party with their money. No pressure on my esteemed colleague and partner over here. But depending on when it comes, who knows? Maybe I'll be there to vote on it. On the other hand, I do think that if we get to the point of we are at $1 million and they estimate it's under 1.2, there may be some of that refinement or scalability or something like that that might be able to be accomplished and still get most of the goals met. So I think it's important that we go forward with it. That said, there's another corridor that's been waiting a long time to be looked at. And I debated whether to bring this up under the previous item under the CTP and Lindsay's report about all of the feedback that we're getting about various corridors. And one of the ones that has just kind of rocked us in Central County, of course, is the 680 corridor between Walnut Creek, Pleasant Hill, and Dublin. And what are we going to do about that corridor? And so I would like to suggest that we ask staff to go back and look at the potential for doing something similar in the way of a study along that corridor as well. And I suspect my colleagues in SWAT would think this was a wonderful thing, seeing as one overturned car tonight just about ruined anybody's idea of a commute. So anyway, that was my thought, is that we do that and ask for staff maybe to come back to us at our November meeting and tell us what potential that is, kind of scope it a little bit, think about how that might be put together. But I absolutely think we go forward. We did this years and years and years ago for Route 4 East, and look what we've accomplished. So if we can have similar results in West County and then maybe finally in Central County and South County, on the 680 corridor, that would be spectacular.
Should we request a future agenda item for that?
We did.
I just did.
Okay, we want to make sure.
Come back in November, that's what I asked.
We did it.
You can't have more than 4 on.
Oh. Thank you. I'm happy. Just want you to know that I support this. Hope that I would like to encourage the board to approve this in concept pledge of $300,000. On behalf of the small bus operators, Westcott, AC Transit, County Connection, they're all supportive of this study because we believe that there should be, various modes of transportation to help, because Highway 80 is crazy. In fact, my husband and I, we carpool and we go against, we leave for office late and come home late just to beat the rush traffic. So this would be a huge help, in addition to the buses, which our residents love, and a future train and bus station, Hercules. So thank you.
I think we did mention something about we wanted to get more familiar with the protocol at Planning Committee of what it would take, because at first it wasn't clear. We asked for $300,000 for a study. Do we get it? But we didn't just look at the 680. In fact, I think we were on a 680 study when we were doing 24. There was another one in there. That may have just been ramp metering. But there's also these other corridors, the San Pablo Dam Road. We're talking about the Iron Horse Trail corridor. In talking at APTA Sunday or Monday with Ben Johnson about what are you going to do between this Concord Naval Weapons Station and there's a road that leads right into Pittsburgh, the waterfront project that Federal was looking at. I think a lot of this is going to come up with how do you get these studies together to get them on the front page, because I keep thinking, isn't it part of One Bay Area? Don't we have these specifically what I call labeled for the next grant positioning? And you're going to see the grants coming out to those people that are moving ahead with the study. So, yeah, not just the freeways. If there's an area that you're using 8-lane roads or 6-lane roads, you're as busy as the freeway.
Well, it sounds optimistic that support's going to be here for this, but on the other hand, when I go back home, I have to show people that I've done my job here in representing West County. So I think that, just a couple of things to point out that this study showed is that all of the major corridors in the county have been studied with the collaboration or direction of CCTA and often funding, except West County. So clearly it's West County's turn. The other thing is that what happens in West County, transportation-wise, really affects the rest of the county because so much traffic comes into West County from 24. Well, 24 doesn't go to West County, but once you get to the maze, it encounters traffic that came from West County, and the San Pablo Dam Road corridor. So this is really important. It's something that affects the whole county, and when it comes time to make a motion, I'd like to do it.
I guess I'm always intrigued when we do consultant work, and I just love the word consultant. But
You're just jealous.
I'm probably jealous. Could you explain to me what I get really intrigued with is the fact that $100,000 contingency. How did we come up with that number? And is that a normal number? See, we threw millions of dollars. $1 million is nothing in transportation. That's one BART car, for God's sakes. Oh, it's a third of a. Oh, I'm sorry. It's a back seat of a BART car. But, 100,000 to me seems. I hate to put 100,000 out there because, like you said, well, in case we need it for other expenses, and quite possibly, I'm sure we'll find a way to make sure we need it for other expenses. But is that a right number? And how did we come up with 100,000? Now, I know the 10%, but
It's 8%.
Commissioner Taylor, I can respond. Martin Engelman, we generally, we try to have contingencies for these studies. Generally, 10% is a better number. This is below 10%. Actually, 120 grand would be a better number for contingency. You set your budget, you go out and you do these things, and just as I've seen in the work we're doing now on the action plans and the countywide plan, there's always someone out there that says, let's try this other alternative. Let's try this other run. And then as time goes by, we have a new forecast. Let's rerun it with a new forecast. It's for unanticipated events, and you want to set that contingency aside as a reserve. You hope you never have to use it, and you hope you come out below your budget. But when there are a lot of different parties at the table like this, there are going to be requests, and we have to consider them and determine whether or not it's worthwhile to change the scope to increase the cost of the study. But then we're at least able to do it and able to accommodate some requests.
so my question is, why wouldn't we have the 120,000 contingency versus?
Well, I've talked John into 100, and if you want to talk him into 120, feel free. So.
Okay. When they all do this to me, it means I'm done.
I'm going to speak as the countywide rep. This is exactly the study we need to do, and we need to lean in on this, and MTC needs to lean in, and I really appreciate BART. To be honest, this is the area of the county we haven't invested in. We really have not done the right job there. We have tried to look at some electronic modeling, electronic changes in how to get people on and off, but in fact, the majority of the people that go to San Francisco, which is what all of our major transportation money still goes towards, is getting people to San Francisco, and we've choked off all of West County. Those people out there can't get anywhere. Their local streets and roads are jammed. The freeways are jammed. We need to do this. And while we haven't, used this type of money before, and for a $5,000 federalized cost, that's a small price to pay for this. But I think it's important that we as CCTA stand up and say, this is an important study. We haven't invested the money out there. Most of the Measure J money did not go there. And this is going to set some groundwork for possibly some of the things we can do. And while the majority of the board members live on this side, if If you're ever driving out there, you think 680 is bad. 80 is that way every single day, without exception. That's just the world is. So I think this is important for MTC to Amy to take back the message that this is really important to the Bay Area. I mean, this is one of the major gateways. And I appreciate what our subcommittee did to kind of tweak this. I just hope that there was a question mark whether CCTA should have a seat there. We should have a seat. I think one of our staff, like a Martin or somebody at that level needs to be there to have a voice and help, put some guidance in there. But I think I'd be more than glad to second this. But I really hope, Amy, you take back that this is important to the whole Bay Area. This isn't just us. And I think that's why it makes sense to have BART involved. And, who knows what the solution's going to be, but I'm sure it's going to be multimodal in a lot of ways.
Janet.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I think I'll just build on what Newell said. I liked what Newell said, of course. And you have to kind of be there to realize that just how congested it is. And guess what? I think some of you may already know this, but the weekend is worse than during the week. You can't go anywhere. And it's not just when things are bad, it's like always that way. So it really is bad there. And as central as people who live there think it is, because we are close to San Francisco, and we're on the way to San Francisco for a lot of people. I think that people need to, when thinking about whether or not we should do this, not just sort of say, well, then we should also do everything else, but say this has maybe some priority for our county. And in fact, West County is part of our county. It's not some stepchild of the county or something. It really is part of the county. And I think that this is really admirable what the different partners have done in coming together to put up funding for this study. It isn't always done this way, and so the fact that it is being in this case, I think, is to be commended to all the parties, including WCTAC, BART, and hopefully CCTA, and hopefully MTC, because it's showing a regional approach to dealing with a very big problem. It is the #1 problem in the Bay Area for transportation. So I would really appreciate it if we did it. And if we think the contingency amount is slightly short, I'm wondering if this agency couldn't come up with the difference, which is how much? 20 or 200? $20,000, which is not a huge amount of money. But I think it would show good faith, certainly, if this agency would come up with that extra 20 so that we, in fact, would have a normal level of contingency in it. So I would like to suggest to the maker of the motion, if there is such a person already on board.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Oh, well,
Talking about $100,000.
that's how much WCTAC is putting in for contingency. But we just heard that the contingency would normally be 120, correct? For this size project?
Commissioner Martin Engelman says that normally when he puts out a contract for consultant services, has about a 10% contingency. He could only squeeze 100,000 out of John, so somebody needs to come up with another 20 if you want to make 10%.
Right, and so I'm suggesting that this wonderful agency right here could maybe be that partner in your motion.
So you're talking about 320,000 instead of 300,000.
Yes. 20,000 difference.
Can you do it?
There's too many mics on.
No, there's only 3.
Is that working? When we estimated the cost of the study and broke it down by task, I think the total that we got to was 1.185. So really, we have 115,000 in contingency. I mean, it's only as good as our estimate. We've done our best to try to estimate what the study's going to cost. But I would love to have the additional 20,000, but I think we've got a little bit of extra cushion there, just a little bit.
Deal here.
$300,000 deal.
No, I just like Mr. Butt want to weigh in because it's very much in Bart's interest. I think it goes without saying to participate in this study. And we know that WCTAC has a small staff and we have much more resources. So we're very happy to add our resources to make this study work. I just want to assure people that it's going to be a broad-based study. You know, when we did the eBART study, we studied classic BART, we studied DMU, we studied BRT. So this study, I think, will be comprehensive too. Just because BART is participating doesn't mean there's a foregone conclusion. We're just very interested in having something happen in West County because we believe, like the rest of you, that that's the worst highway in the whole Bay Area, and I try and avoid it, and some of you have to do it every day. So I just wanted to weigh in and say that we're very supportive of this. But in addition to that, I'm on the Capital Corridor Board, and the Capital Corridor is also doing a vision study and will be certainly linked into this study because it's very important that we have the same vision for the same corridor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I just wanted to concur. I think this is an excellent study. I think part of the strength of it is it does bring together all the different transit modes, the cities, the county, and a regional organization. This is the kind of study that MTC sponsors. It's absolutely appropriate and ties in with the mission. Randy and Gail and I have been working with MTC staff and BART staff and CCTA to bring this together. So there's a real awareness and support. It obviously hasn't come yet. It could go first to our committees and then to the board. But the step that's happened at WCTAC, that's happening tonight here, that'll happen at BART, is extremely important in building support for this project. I would add a couple things. I met last week with the Capital Corridor, some of the directors, and talked about the linkages of the Capital Corridor, both coming from the east, but coming into from Martinez all the way down into Oakland and further south. So I think looking at the way the organizational chart is set up, I recognize that BART manages Capital Corridor, which is one of the reasons it's so great, but that we want to make sure that the Capital Corridor, management is involved in this, because you kind of have two hats. You have the BART extension or BART services and then the Capital Corridor. And since Capital Corridor serves a lot of the cities, it's really important that, kind of like the Paris model where you have the RER and you have the Metro, and they're different, but they're linked. So I think we, obviously at MTC we have to go through the same process that we've done here, but this is exactly the kind of funds. I think to Dave's point too, this links very closely with our regional planning process for Plan Bay Area and housing and providing the transit corridors that are critical to the kind of planning that we're talking about doing. So I think it's going to be a great study, and I think CCTA taking the sort of that lead role, or however it's going to be structured, or I guess it's really going to be a cooperative kind of plan, will really be strong. And I think it's an honor to be able to support this at the commission level. And I know since federal chairs the program and allocations committee, that will make sure that it'll get approved. But there's been a lot of groundwork done at the staff level, so I think it'll be a great study.
Commissioner Pierce, do you want a 1 month comeback, or do you, not a very good idea or lay it out, do you want to give us more time to give you something a little bit better on the 680 study?
I'd just like an initial thought about process for this kind of thing, and then you can come back with something more complete. Just report in.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair. And thank you, Julie, because that was Planning Committee's initial concern, was what kind of process had this gone through? And I think we can tell from the discussion tonight that everyone is in support of this. But again, we're seeing an increase in our federal funding. What happens if we don't get that second year of $150,000? Would we take it from somewhere? You'd come back to us? Nobody's got a crystal ball, and who knows what's going to happen, and so I don't want to be the doomsayer here, but, and I appreciate Commissioner Abelson's comment, but we were only asked for, the idea is only to have the $100,000 contingency. I don't mind looking at that again as we go down the road, if they need a little bit more to get them over the goal line, but I'm concerned about what happens. Is the plan to go to the other partners? We'd all give in, again.
If I could respond through the chair, Mr. Chairman. So Commissioner Mitchoff, the extra money is actually in an interagency agreement with MTC, so we have that spread out over the next three
Okay,
fiscal
thank
years,
you.
and we can accelerate it so the 300 is available in the
Wonderful.
next 2 years. I do want to talk about the process on the 680 study. There are more issues than meets the eye on the 680 study. In the case of West County, you have a unified WICTAC, and WICTAC is along the entire corridor. On I-680, we have two RTPCs. We have the Transpac, and then we have the SWAT, and we even have, if you want to connect to Dublin, we have the Tri-Valley. Down further south, they have some mixed feelings about transit, though they all love it, they want it. They don't know where to put it. So I think process-wise, what would be good, and this is the perfect time, is if we could get the initiative to do an I-680 transit study in each of those action plans. Your action plans are coming back to you in November and December, and if we could have SWAT and TVTC and Transpac all put that in, just like it is in the WICTAC action plan 4 times over for the past 3 years, or past 5 years, I think. They've been asking for that study. We need to get it into the action plans as a firm belief, and then that turns into an implementation of the countywide transportation plan. So by the time you adopt your countywide plan, you would have that in as an implementation, and then we could start to look at funding and get that thing rolling.
So I'd like to move the item, and do we want the other 20?
Yes.
Okay, so,
As contingency.
doesn't sound like a good idea. Okay, let's,
As long as we don't do it for anyone?
move the staff recommendation.
So I'll turn on my microphone. Any comments? If not, move on to item number 7, commissioner and staff comments. I don't have anything to comment at this time. Julie?
Yes, Chair Romick, on behalf of the entire board, we'd like to extend our condolences to you on the loss of your father, and I would like to ask if we could adjourn in his memory this evening.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any other comments?
And not to take away from that, but I'm sure some of you have heard, but maybe not all of you, on a different track that we're all involved in. We lost our executive director of the East Bay Regional Communications Systems, Bill McCammon, who's a former fire chief. He passed away very suddenly early Monday morning, and so we're waiting to hear about funeral arrangements for that. But if we could also adjourn in his memory. He's done a lot for our county and Alameda County relative to our communication systems, and I know Bart's part of that, and all of our fire and police.
Other comments? Issues this time. 7.3, executive staff comments. Thank you.
Commissioners. That's my report. All right. Just good news. The first item on my executive director's report is the active transportation program. Our project happened to be right at the cutoff line. I might have mentioned this before, and because we had asked for $2 million of ATP dollars, we got our passed over, and Berkeley got the remainder, which was about $988,000. And so I made a phone call to Steve, and he called me back, and he said, "Let me look into it, and I'll get back to you on Monday." And on Monday, we got an allocation of $682,000. So that means that we'll move Measure J money off of the Phase 1 and put it on Phase 2. So that means we're not $60 million short. We're only $59 million short on Phase 2 now. That's good news. Went out to State Route 4 with Andre Boutros, who's the executive director of the California Transportation Commission. And that, if you haven't been out there, and I know some of you drive out there all the time, that route is changing every day. The traffic is on the outside now, and the contractor has the median. So I just want to recognize Ivan and Ross. These guys are doing a great job managing those contracts. We're trying to bring all those contracts back onto schedule, and they're making a lot of progress. 3B will be back on schedule except for weather days, and weather days are weather days, and so that's great news. So we're trying to finish this on time so we can give BART access to the median when they're supposed to have it. So hopefully we can bring in that final day when it goes into revenue service a little bit earlier. So we're doing our best. If we could talk to your contractor, that'd be great too, but I understand you're very protective of your contractors, but we still have ways of talking to them. State Route 4, State Route 160, that project's come along very quickly. We had our first partnering session. There's an issue with dirt. I laid out the issues. We're trying to work through that. We're trying to get that project back on schedule as well. The autonomous test bed has worked out better than I ever expected. We got an agreement through the U.S. Navy in less than 4 months, working with Mike Wright with the City of Concord. I was asked to try to bring smart jobs to Concord, to that Naval Weapons Station, by Assemblymember Bonilla when she was our board member. She basically dragged me by my ear into the kitchen to tell me a couple of things and then said, bring some smart jobs to the weapons station when it's redeveloped. We got an agreement through the Navy, the City of Concord, Mercedes-Benz, and ourselves are all have access now to test the autonomous vehicles. And one of the ideas maybe in the future, because it's so large of a development, that maybe you can base your transportation system off a subscription service using autonomous vehicles. So suppose you live way out on the other end of it, but you want to use BART, but you don't want to own a car. Maybe in the future, you can use an autonomous subscription-based service that you just call it the car, it comes to get you, takes you to BART, but it doesn't waste one of those parking spaces. You know, that's the future. And I don't really know what it's going to look like, but these are great opportunities. And I was in Washington, D.C. this morning, and yesterday I met with the Global Automobile Alliance. And the thing I loved about their card is the first car on the back that they represent, the manufacturer, is Aston Martin. So I've always wanted an Aston Martin, so hopefully that they'll come to our test bed. But yeah, exactly. We're trying to get Hyundai here. We're talking to Honda, and we're going to talk to Nissan. And so we're going to try to bring all the OEMs to the test bed. We'll lock them all up for the autonomous vehicle test bed in California, in the United States, the largest. And then we'll work on Phase 2, and Phase 2 is open up the city streets to test cars talking to cars. And so what we've told the automobile manufacturers is that you embrace technology. You want them to bring their smart jobs, their Tier 1 manufacturing jobs to Contra Costa, and we're open for business. So Lindsay did a great job. She released the press release on October the 1st when I was flying back, and she got interviewed, and Jack got interviewed, and so I land, and I do an interview. I'm driving home from San Francisco, and I hear Lindsay's voice, and she does a great job. I'm reading the newspaper the next morning. I see Jack's comments in the paper, so I asked him, what's wrong with this picture? But the point was they both did a great job dealing with the media, so I'm very proud of that. So we're getting a lot of airplay. I think we got about $600,000 worth of airplay in the United States. We got a lot of airplay in Europe as well. And I think that's my report. Thank you.
Okay. On to the calendar. Are there any questions? Calendar? Okay, one more.
Yeah, the calendar, excuse me. The 22nd, Lindsay, is the 24th? 24th. We're having a ribbon cutting event. And you want to talk about that, Lindsay? It's a pretty big deal.
It's October 24th, right?
Yes.
ShamWow Marketing, you got not one, but you got two bridges.
So Friday, October 24th at 10:30, we'll be having an event at the Streets of Brentwood to cut the ribbon for the second Sand Creek Bridge, which will be opening later that evening. And we've worked out a partnership with the Streets of Brentwood Shopping Center, and to celebrate that bridge opening and how accessible it's making the city of Brentwood, the Streets of Brentwood Shopping Center will be offering discounts to shoppers on Saturday, October 25th. Almost all of their stores will be offering a discount of 10% or more, and they'll have little balloons out to announce which stores have a deal. So you get to an easy drive out there for discounted shopping all in one weekend.
We want it Friday when we're there for the ribbon cutting.
We can talk with them about that.
Commissioner, I have one other. There's a conflict. January 1st is a scheduled APC meeting. So we're going to have to move that because I figure you don't want to be in an APC meeting on the 1st. So what are some of the suggestions, Denise?
My initial thought was to have it the following Thursday. However, someone pointed out that conflicts with, I believe, TransPAC's normal meeting.
Can the next time APC meets in November look at potential dates?
Let's do that. I should know better. Karen and I know we're trying to organize things. Normally we take January off for TransPAC, but we're sort of in a fluid situation right now, and we might need that meeting. So let's see what we can do about that. We might be able to hold it later.
I'll make a suggestion, since we've canceled a couple of APC meetings, we really have some issues that we should get to. Let's make the recommendation to do it on the 8th so staff knows,
and we'll try to accommodate that with the TransPAC meeting.
maybe you can just adjust your time or something.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I also need to point out, I just realized the November meeting, none of the county people will be here. I'm hoping you would still have a quorum, but we have our annual conference down in Los Angeles this year in Anaheim. And so I know neither Supervisor Anderson, maybe Supervisor Pifo, I'll talk to her, but she was going to be out of town. She's our other alternate, but I know Supervisor Glover and I will be down there, and I know Supervisor Anderson will be down there. Go ahead and vote everything in you want, but we won't be here. And I'm not going to ask you to move that meeting because it's just too difficult, unless you really want to.
Any other calendar adjustments we need to make before moving on? If not, we'll adjourn this meeting in honor of my father, Kenneth Romick, and Mr. Bill McCammon. Adjourn to our next meeting. Thank you.